we will examine private funding and the influence it's had on the administration of our nation's elections. Secure elections require proper election administration. Americans deserve to have confidence in their elections, which means elections should be free from undue private influence. In recent years, we've seen millions of dollars in private money flow unchecked to states and local government elections offices. Unlike political contribution, these funds are unregulated in many ways. Zuckerbucks, a shorthand term for the private funding provided to states and localities, beginning with the 2020 election, has sowed distrust in our elections. In the fall of 2020, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, contributed $350 million in tax-exempt funds to the Center for Tech and Civic Life. The couple also gave $70 million to the Center for Election Innovation and Research. In turn, these groups sent multi-million-dollar checks to states and localities for their election administration efforts. Publicly, CTCL said these funds were intended to support poll worker recruitment efforts or the purchase of new equipment. But in reality, some of these funds were used primarily for voter registration events and get out the vote efforts in Democratic-leaning cities and towns. In my home state of Wisconsin, Zuckerbucks has sowed distrust in our elections. Let's take one example. In southeast Wisconsin, in the city of Racine, a mobile voting van traveled around the city of Racine, a historically Democratic city, to meet voters and collect early ballots. Racine election administrators used Zuckerbucks to buy what looks like a food truck, labeled it the clerk's office, then drove it around and collected ballots in highly propensity Democratic areas. Wisconsin citizens complained that the city's use of the van was illegal under Wisconsin law, risked opportunities for voter fraud, and was used to advantage Democrats. Now, just last month, a Wisconsin judge ruled the practice was illegal. Wisconsin voters are concerned about undue private influence in the administration of our nation's elections. Elections are partisan, but elections administration should never be partisan. The millions of private dollars being funneled to local offices raises serious questions about the conditions placed on their use. Imagine this Sunday night at the Super Bowl if the refs were paid for by a tech billionaire from San Francisco. How do you think Taylor Swift and Kansas City Chiefs fans would feel about that? How would they react to that? I don't think they'd be okay with that. This wouldn't instill confidence in the game. The same goes for our elections administration. Undue private influence distorts Americans' confidence in our elections. Zuckerbucks distorts confidence in our elections. It's why I'm working to ban Zuckerbucks. Since 2020, 27 states have recognized this problem and prohibited private funding of elections administration. In my home state of Wisconsin, measures to stop Zuckerbucks were passed in the Assembly and the Senate in 2021 and again in 2022. But our Democratic Governor, Tony Evers, vetoed those efforts. Mark Zuckerberg said his 2020 donation was a one-time thing. But left-wing groups like CTCL continue their partisan efforts. Today, we see the Center for Tech and Civic Life is in the midst of a 5-year, $80 million program called the U.S. Alliance for Elections Excellence. The new program is committed to distributing millions of dollars over the next 5 years to several states. There's a liberal bucket of states, including California, Connecticut, and Illinois. They're also going to states such as Nevada, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I asked my colleagues, what do those 3 states have in common? I'll give you a hint. They're presidential swing states that haven't banned Zuckerbucks. Why don't you see a state like Pennsylvania on the list, a key swing state? Their Democratic governor signed a ban on Zuckerbucks. So even some Democrats realize that this is a problem. In Congress, I have a solution to prevent undue private influence in elections administration. It's why this committee passed the American Confidence in Elections Act, which includes my friend Claudia Tenney's Ban Zuckerbucks bill. The legislation would end special federal tax treatment for organizations like the Center for Tech and Civic Life and their donors that seek to influence elections administration. And we have released the Model State ACE Act, a toolkit of model state legislation for states to consider. The toolkit includes strong reforms to prevent undue private influence in elections administration by banning donations directly to local elections offices. Today, I look forward from hearing from our witnesses who've written and researched the role Zuckerbucks and private funding can have on elections administration, and drawing attention to what steps Congress and our state legislators must take to resolve the crisis in confidence.